It's quality time. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the live stream for the watch along of this qualifying here at the Imola Grand Prix. Possibly the last time maybe we race here in the gorgeous track of Imola. We all know the history around here. In 1994, we lost the likes of Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger. So, possibly for one last time here in the near future, it's time for the 20 of the fastest cars in the world to go as fast as they can. This is qualifying for the Imola Grand Prix. Also, as we all know, this is the 75th anniversary of Formula One. So, yeah, happy 75th anniversary to everyone who is celebrating. But, yeah, we have less than a minute before which the cars will be out on track. And the current status going into the qualifying is McLaren are rapid. And when I say they are rapid, I mean they are absolutely faster than anybody else combined. But yeah, the closest competitor to McLaren maybe is Max Verstappen or the Mercedes. But still, throughout the whole weekend in the three practice sessions, McLaren have been untouchable. 1-2 in practice 1, 1-2 in practice 2, and 1-2 in practice 3. So, can they repeat the feat this weekend? We'll find out as the cars now roll out on the track for Q1. The Saubers of Bortoleto and Hulkenberg are the first cars currently out on track. So, before these drivers start their Q1 push laps, let's maybe discuss of what has gone on in qualifying till now in practice till now in the weekend. As I said, it's only been Papaya on top. Oscar Piastri was fastest in practice 1 and 2, and Lando Norris was fastest in practice 3. But uh, meaning that McLaren are quickest doesn't mean that this weekend is going to be awful. Remember the days between Hamilton and Rosberg? We used to have amazing battles between those two drivers. This is going to be something similar to that, rest assured. Yeah, sorry for the pause there. I was just changing some few bits and pieces in the stream. But as I was saying, meaning that one team is fastest doesn't mean that the weekend is gonna be awful. McLaren, the inter-team driver dynamics are the thing to watch out for this weekend. For the past few weekends, to be said, except Australia, to be honest, Oscar Piastri has had the edge over Lando Norris. Lando Norris, as we all know, won in Australia and had a huge drivers' championship lead over his teammate, scoring just 1 point. But as the season has progressed from then on, Oscar Piastri has slowly and steadily grabbed on his. Uh, sorry, I mean, yeah. Slowly but steadily, as the season has progressed, Oscar Piastri has just tightened his lead in the Drivers' Championship. Currently, he's leading by 15 points over his teammate Lando Norris. And yeah, in the past 3 weekends, has won the race. So, definitely a lot of work to do there from the Norris side of garages and the Piastri side of garages. Would like to carry on this momentum as far as possible. Talking of momentum, and one team which doesn't has one is Scuderia Ferrari. Obviously, we all know Imola is the home track for the prancing horses, and not to be honest, a few people had hope over them, but after the practice running, I'm sure even those people might have left all their hope over Ferraris because this weekend has been nothing but awful. As currently we ride on board on a lap with Lewis Hamilton for his fastest lap. But talking of Ferrari, the tire grip and especially the rear tire grip has been quite awful. Whenever we have been on board with both of the drivers, it is quite visibly seen that the Ferrari is lacking quite a lot of mechanical grip. And as we all know, this track is possibly one of the most mechanically demanding corners on the current calendar. So yeah, a lot of work to be done there for the Scuderias. Not good in FP1, FP2, and FP3. Even Hamilton was seen waving his hand in anger in the car in FP3 session. So yeah, let's see what lap time he can do currently through sectors 1 and 2. is about Bortoletto's lap time, but come on, guys, Bortoletto and Hulkenberg is not the fight Ferrari are hoping for this season. Let's see what lap time Lewis Hamilton can do through the final of the two Rivazas, if I'm not wrong. To Rivazza 1 and Rivazza 2, the crowd cheering the two Ferraris. Lewis Hamilton is slower than Fernando Alonso, a 1 minute 16.258 for Lewis Hamilton, puts him up into P2. The next driver to cross the line will be Alex Albon, and Williams, to be honest, have been quite rapid this week. And I was gonna say, as Alex Albon goes to the top of the timesheets with a lap time 700 faster than Fernando Alonso, and his teammate Carlos Sainz sits in P4. Lewis's teammate Charles Leclerc will be the next driver over the line. Let's see what lap time he sets compared to his teammate. Because throughout this whole weekend, it is seen that Charles is maybe a few tenths faster than Lewis. Let's see what he does. Charles Leclerc crosses the line, is slower than Lewis Hamilton, 16.5, and a further 2 tenths slower than his teammate. But the interesting time to see will be the McLarens. Which McLaren driver comes out on top will be the main battle for pole today. But talking of Ferrari, even Lewis Hamilton was seen waving his hand in anger in the cockpit whilst he was in FP3. So just that simple action speaks a thousand words for the mood in that Ferrari team currently. As the reigning world champion Max Verstappen starts his flying lap. Talking of Max Verstappen as well, the weekend hasn't been quite great for Max either. Smashed a lot of records at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, but apart from that, it has been an average weekend to be said. As there is yellow flag, I think some driver has crashed as Verstappen sets the fastest first sector of the race. But talking of Max, had a good weekend in the Nürburgring Nordschleife, breaking the GT3 record. But into Formula 1, oh, that's a Red Bull. That's a Red Bull of Yuki Tsunoda into the barrier. Which corner is that? Let me see. I'm not sure. Yuki Tsunoda is in the barrier and is out of qualifying. Oh dear, oh dear. I think that's maybe into Aqua Minerale into Sector 3, but Yuki Tsunoda is now out of qualifying. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. This weekend, Yuki was looking quite great and somewhat matching the pace of Max Verstappen. Not exactly to par with Max, but still was maybe within a tenth or two of Max's pace. But yeah, not the incident Red Bull and Yuki would have wanted. But good to know that Yuki is safely out of the car, but not great for the confidence of Yuki and for Red Bull as well. Red flag into qualifying 12 minutes in. But it'll be interesting to see what has happened in the crash there. Maybe I think Yuki might have lost his rear end, which caused him to go into the barriers. Let's see. As a quite disheartened and not so happy Yuki Tsunoda climbs out of his RB21. Let's ride on board with Yuki Tsunoda into oh, it was sector 1, sorry, my bad. Into sector 1, the two chickens. Oh, just took a lot of. Oh my god, that was a hefty crash. I mean, a lot of curb there, and the car went upside down for Yuki's crash. I mean, that was a huge impact, and good to see that Yuki's okay. When I first looked at the crash, I maybe thought that it was a simple crash, just going to the barriers. But into the second chicane of, as you can follow on the track map, it's just a second, I'll so that you can guys can see more clearly. It's so here is turn 1 2. Why am I not able to figure out the track? Yeah, it's turns 1 2 and 3 in the beginning, and then we go through 4 and 5. So into the turn 4 and 5 chicane, right at the end of sector 1, Yuki was pushing like absolutely crazy when we ride on board with him. Took a a slightest of more curves into the first chicane, and bam, into the barrier. Did a good two cartwheel and then landed safely. But the Red Bull is absolutely in pieces at the moment, and surely Yuki, with a lot of drivers here to set a lap time, will be starting the race in P20. I mean, when Yuki signed for Red Bull and in the past few races, A good positive for Yuki as compared to Liam Lawson was that at least he was not qualifying last. Like we know, in the three qualifying sessions Liam qualified, in two of them he was dead last in the qualifying. So that was a positive when Yuki was driving for the Red Bull. But now, him crashing the car in the barrier, and we all know Red Bull are a lot more strict when it comes to the driver moves. So not the start of the weekend Yuki would have wanted to, but yeah, again great to see he's out of the car. 12 minutes left in the qualifying session. Only 10 drivers had set the lap times, but the used names in the likes of Verstappen, Norris, and Piastri didn't set a lap time. So in the meantime, thank you very much everyone who had tuned in. Please don't forget to like the stream and subscribe the channel. It will really mean a lot to me. Let's get to maybe 5 likes if possible, please. It will really help the stream go like an absolute rocket ship like Max was in Nürburgring. As a It will be boosting the algorithm, that's to be said. But yeah, going to the action back on track. Still under red flag conditions, and it will be quite a great job and a huge night for the Red Bull mechanics to fix that broken in pieces car of Yuki Tsunoda. And yeah, maybe Yuki might even do a pit lane start with a few setup changes to his car. So yeah, thank you, Ernest, for the patience there. As I was talking, barrier repairs are still underway on the track because the part of the track where Yuki crashed, um, you take a lot of speed going to the barriers into that corners, and because of that, the barriers, especially the tire barriers, are usually damaged. And we all know in this modern times of Formula One, safety is the utmost priority. So yeah, barrier repairs underway. Again, looking on board with Yuki Tsunoda, a great thing, a big thing that was seen that his car bottomed out quite heavily when he was negotiating the corners. So that was the main primary reason because of which his car just lost control and directly went straight in the barriers. And while his car was going towards the barrier, one of his wheels just came off and went under the chassis. So because of which his car just literally turned upside down, which is not a good scene to be honest. And Max Radio, yeah. So Max being informed on the radio that Yuki, when Max was on a flying lap, just for your information. So use blow for Red Bull. Just a second, Oscar radio here. Yeah. So Max Verstappen indeed was on a flying lap when the incident happened. So Liam Ross on radio. Let's see what he says. Yeah. So as I was saying, what impact does this red flag has in the proceedings of the races? That on the likes who were on a fast lap, and if I can see on my screens, it was just Verstappen, Antonelli, and Russell. So this hampers their run plan quite a lot because already they had went through a tire warm up lap and already were on a pushing lap. So because of that, the tire has already done one heat cycle. And we all know with this new C6 tires, they are quite volatile to wearing out quite quickly. So because of this heat cycle, Max might need to change his tire set because these tires won't give him the absolute peak performance which a new set of soft tires generally would. Also talking of Mercedes, they were just starting the flying lap, so not a huge loss there, but yeah, that's why it was being said coming into the weekend that you need to set your lap times as soon as possible because there might be any moment on the track where a car goes off or there's a red flag, and to avoid such situation where you don't have a lap time on the board but have less time remaining. So yeah, confirmation from the FIA, it will be 3 minutes until the resumption of Q1. Sorry, 3 minutes until Q1 is underway. So in the meantime, maybe I think we shall talk about how the weekend has panned out till now. Currently in P1, it's Alex Albon, but I'm sure he won't be there for quite a long time until the big guys, we should say them, set the lap times. But generally, throughout the whole weekend, I will say that the Williams have been quite good and have had quite a decent pace into the machinery because throughout the whole three practice sessions, the Williams have constantly been clocking top five, top six lap times, which is quite impressive to be honest as a Williams. And on the contrary, the team which had the most fans coming into this weekend, Scuderia Ferrari, have just been absolutely nowhere. Like Ferrari, well, hyped quite a lot going to the weekend that yeah, it will be a good weekend, good track for them. Maybe this is the weekend where they finally find their pace. Quite few bits of upgrades for Ferrari going to this weekend, but unfortunately, the Scuderias have been not able to find the pace of the frontrunners. In all the three practice sessions, both the drivers were seen struggling with the ride height and the especially the rear tires of the car, because of which they have been struggling quite massively with the grip and the performance they have in the car. The team have said that they have done some changes overnight in the terms of setup and a few other changes in the suspension. But today morning in FP3, Lewis Hamilton was even seen punching his air, punching his hand in the air in anger because of the way the car was reacting to him. So yeah, not a start Ferrari would have wanted the weekend, but let's see what they can do. And to be honest with you, I even feel that both the Ferraris might not be able to make it through into the third part of qualifying. Like last weekend, we saw it with Lewis Hamilton. Maybe again this weekend, it is Lewis who is not able to make it through into Q3. Uh, as a Ferrari, not as a huge Ferrari fan, but as a Lewis fan, I will just hope that the pace is there in the car and the Ferraris are able to make it through into Q3. But yeah, let's see how this pans out as the drivers are now queuing up at the end of the pit lane, waiting for the session to resume, which will begin anytime soon now. So, in the meantime, thank you very much, everyone who have tuned into the stream. Please don't forget to like the stream and subscribe the channel. Your help and support really motivates me a lot. So, yeah, which will be quite great. I thought it was a release, so not sure what has happened with Call Up Into there, but saying something on the radio, I will just talk with you guys about that. Yeah, so it's green flag and the cars are now back on track. We have currently 11 minutes and 30 seconds left into this first part of qualifying, and currently only 10 out of the 20 drivers have set a fast lap time. So the drivers would like to set a lap time as soon as possible, because maybe if there is another incident very soon, then the next lap they have will be a do or die lap, which no driver will want on such a technical track with a neo tire compound. Okie dokie. As here we see Liam Lawson out on track. Talking of Liam Lawson, let's talk about Isaac Hadja. Isaac Hadja, when he came into the race seat with RB, there weren't a lot of hopes with him, because we all know Red Bull are maybe more focused on the young prodigy Erwin Limlad, who is currently competing in Formula 3 and Formula 2. Oh, I think it's in Formula 2 if I'm not wrong. So yeah, Isaac Hadja was kind of thought as a seat filler, not exactly awful, but yeah, he didn't have such a great junior career to come by that, oh, his CV is shouting for a race seat. But yeah, to be honest with you, he has been doing quite a great job. And if I look at the head to head with Liam Lawson, he has had quite a huge advantage over his teammate throughout this weekend as well. Talking of Hadja is currently on our screen, but throughout the weekend as well, Isaac has been okay. So Isaac Hadja is the only driver on the grid who has never been knocked out in Q1. That's quite interesting to see. Okay, throughout the whole careers, because if I'm not wrong, the likes of Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, and Leclerc, sorry, and Russell have made it through to the third part of qualifying. But yeah, throughout the whole career, they are saying. But as I was saying about Isaac Hadja, his rookie season has been absolutely amazing. Maybe that V-Carb is not as good of a car as they would have wanted at the start of the season. The the pace into that car, the V-Carb has also been quite up and down throughout the whole season, but still Isaac Hadja has been doing a great job. And if he continues doing such great performances, and if Yuki wins the car even 2 or 3 times more in the upcoming races, he might even be racing with Red Bull. You never know. So riding on board on a lap with Isaac Hadja here into the first sector, 400s slower than Alex Albon, which is not bad to be honest with you. Into the second part and the tricky chicane before the sector 3, riding over the bumps and over the curbs to maximize the lap time as possible into the final two corners. Gets a slight little slipstream from the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll, then the two Rivazza 1, Rivazza 2, the exit of the corners has been extended a bit this weekend so that the drivers can push as much as possible. Isaac Hadja over the line goes P3, uh, a bit slower than Fernando Alonso and Alex Albon, but still a decent lap time there from Hadja. Riding on board on a lap with Oliver Behrman. is down on his lap time into sector 1. Let's see what lap time he can put in into the final two sectors. Struggling with his car. Oh my god, that's so awful. So here we go. Q2 will be now underway in 5 minutes time. So while we were away, I was just seeing some of my old streams to maybe take some motivation that yes, I can even do live streams because at the moment, maybe I feel that this is not a part which is made for me. But yeah, apart from that, the drivers, as I said, knocked out were Lawson, Hulkenberg, Ocon, Behrman, and Tsunoda. Obviously, Yuki Tsunoda crashed out into turns 3 and 4, which is not great for his RB future. But a thing to be noted about is Oliver Behrman because initially, if I'm not wrong, he qualified P12 or P13, which is safe and into Q2. But then FIA reviewed his lap time and they figured out that he maybe had exceeded track limit somewhere and his lap time was deleted. But again, his lap time is being reviewed once again. And if his lap time is reinstated, then it will be Gabriel Bortoleto who is out of the session, or else it is Oliver Behrman who is out of the session. But yeah, 4 minutes until Q2 is underway. Talking of incidents into Q1, first of all, Yuki Tsunoda crashing out into the second chicane, that is, it turns 4 and 5 chicane. Not at all good for his confidence going into the whole weekend because still we all know points are scored on Sunday, and Imola being a track where overtaking is very, very, very difficult. So, not the start of the weekend Yuki would have wanted. Also, Colapinto, who is replacing Jack Doohan for 5 races only. So, as which was speculated throughout the whole time when Colapinto was announced that it is quite difficult for a rookie driver to come into a car in which he hasn't done testing, and also with the time span of only 5 races, pressure is on Colapinto. And we all know Colapinto has pace, is a good driver, but sometimes we have seen in the past is a bit more crash happy than as compared to some other drivers. So yeah, not great start to his new life in Alpine. Some people might even speculate that's crash gate 2.0 so that Colapinto stays into Q2. Maybe we don't know. It's the same person at the helm of Alpine, Flavio Briatore. So yeah. Apart from that, out at front, Fernando Alonso was P3 and Lance Stroll. Yes, you heard it right. Lance Stroll is P4, man. I mean, I didn't focus on that about lap times, but when I focused, I was like, is it the 30th of February or is it some other day? Because Lance Stroll qualifying into P4, I think it has been ages. In my predictions videos, I've always been qualifying Lance Stroll maybe in P18, 19, and 20 because come on, that guy is not at all interested even in racing in Formula 1. But new upgrades for Aston Martin this weekend are seeming to be working at the moment, at least in Q1, with Alonso P3 and Stroll P4. Let's see how the rest of the qualifying pans out. And with Aston Martin being so high, this means Ferrari are now the sixth or the fifth fastest car. See, McLaren are the quickest. Then we can say it's Mercedes. Then it's Red Bull. Then it's Williams. Now Aston Martin. So are currently Ferrari the sixth fastest car in Formula One, which is quite not so great to be honest with you guys, as we have the drivers now lining up and queuing at the end of the pit lane before the start of Q2. So as I was saying at the start of the Q1 and when Yuki crashed, that all the teams and drivers will be looking to set a lap time as soon as possible, because Imola is quite a harsh track on the drivers, is very technical and prone to making a lot of mistakes. And with drivers making a lot of mistakes comes red flags. And with red flags, there are a lot of chances where a driver on a fast lap loses his or her his lap time, and that is every team's worst nightmare. That a tire set is waste and also a opportunity for setting a good lap is waste. As Gabriel Bortoleto, the pit lane is open and Bortoleto is now out on track for Q2. So in Q2, if we take a look at the things, I think maybe Bortoleto will be knocked out. We can say Hadja because the car is good. He's driving quite well as well, but still, I don't think the car is worth of being into the Q2 session. We can have Hadja, we can have Colapinto will be knocked out surely because his car was heavily damaged, and under the regulations of Formula One, his car will have to be carried into the pit lane with the help of another vehicle. And if that's the case, then you cannot take part into the further parts of qualifying or any race session. So Colapinto and Hadja, and maybe then it's anyone's game to win or lose because the Mercedes look weak, the McLarens, the Aston Martins, even the Williams look weak. I won't be shocked if the both Ferraris are knocked out. I hope that's not the case, but still, it is very much well and truly possible as the drivers are now slowly coming out for the laps into Q2. So, in the meantime, thank you for 150 views, which is quite good to be honest. So please don't forget to like the stream and subscribe the channel and all that good stuff. It really helps and motivates me a lot to keep making these live streams because generally the responses on my videos have been quite good, but the live stream part of it has never gone quite to plan to be honest. So yeah, Q2 is underway. And just a reminder to anyone joining the stream now, we have lost Yuki Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon, Ollie Behrman, Nico Hulkenberg, and who was the other driver? I don't remember. Sorry for that poor quality of the stream. And also, we have lost Franco Colapinto, who crashed into the barriers at the ending stages of Q1. So, only 14 drivers will be taking part into this Q2 session. Riding on board now with Max Verstappen. Obviously, in Q1, Max set a mega lap time and was 3.5 tenths faster than Oscar Piastri and 7 tenths quicker than the likes of Lando Norris. So let's see how Max Verstappen's laps pan out. Verstappen heading towards turn 1 and turn 2. Maybe a bit more cautious there, avoiding a bit of curves because we all know the main part which where the reward is Q3. So Verstappen taking it a bit more easily here. He is a McLaren, gets out of the way quite well, and through sector 1, fastest sector 1 for Max Verstappen. In the speed trap part, as I said, Oscar Piastri and McLaren are the slowest, while Franco Colapinto, surprisingly, with that Alpine engine, was the fastest. But surely he's not taking part in this qualifying anymore now, as this is the crucial part of the lap, the final sector, where lap time can be made or lost. You need to be on absolute commitment through those yellow curves, and then the final two 90-degree corners, the left-handers, where a lot of lap time can be made or lost. As here is George Russell, who was a bit late getting out of the slipstream, but yeah, Verstappen definitely got a lot of slipstream there from his good mate George. As Verstappen rounds the final two corners, Charles Leclerc goes fastest in sector 1 as Max Verstappen goes P1, a 1 minute 15.400 for the Dutchman there. Let's see what Leclerc can do. Fastest in sector 1, a personal best in sector 2 for Charles. Seems a decent lap to me. Let's see what lap time Charles can be able to do here through the final two Lesmos. Yeah, it's Lesmo. No, I don't remember the track name. Sorry, I will be well prepared for tomorrow's stream. A bit down on Max's time in the first two sectors. To the final corner, lost a bit more time, but still a great lap time for the Ferraris. 2 tenths slower than the likes of Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc. Kimi Antonelli will be the next driver crossing the line. Kimi Antonelli bringing his schoolmates on a picnic, and surely I would have loved to be Kimi's teammate in this scenario. Let's see what lap time the young Italian can put here. Obviously, the home race for Antonelli. Further back, Russell is on a good lap in the first two sectors, is like about 200 slower than Max Verstappen, as Lewis Hamilton goes P3, 10 slower than his teammate, 10th and a half slower than his teammate. That's not a bad benchmark for Lewis, as Kimi Antonelli goes only up to P6, 7 tenths slower than Max Verstappen. That's not great. Russell will be the next driver crossing the line, and George Russell goes up to P2, 10th and a half slower than Max Verstappen. The two McLarens are the next drivers we have to watch out for because obviously going into qualifying we thought that they are the front runners for pole position. Let's see what lap time both of the McLarens can do. Lando Norris crosses the line, goes fastest, a 10th and a half faster than Max Verstappen, a 1 minute 15.261. Oscar Piastri is the next driver going to sector 2 and 3. Throughout the weekend, Oscar has been a bit more faster than Lando, like a tenth and a half faster than Lando throughout the whole lap. As to the first two sectors, he is a tenth and a half faster than Lando. Let's see what lap time Oscar can do through the final two corners. Foot flat to the floor, maximum commitment to the final two corners, keeping sure that you don't exceed track limits there as Oscar Piastri crosses the line and goes P1, not by a huge margin, 20 milliseconds faster than Oscar Lando Norris, but yeah, a great benchmark there for Oscar Piastri. Carlos Sainz is the next driver who is crossing the line. Obviously, Carlos Sainz and Williams trying to make into Q2, Q3 for the third weekend running. Williams currently on a up with two great drivers and a great team principal at the helm. Carlos Sainz crosses the line, a goes P9. So yeah, a great lap time there for Carlos. And after the first few runs in Q1, the drivers who are currently in the knockout zone are Stroll, Gasly, Albon, Bortoleto, and obviously Colapinto, who is out of qualifying. Yeah, we are getting ready for Q3 now, and the drivers who are knocked out in Q2 are Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, and Gabriel Bortoleto and Franco Colapinto. Maybe the last two names are not that shocking, but boy oh boy, both the Ferraris and the only Italian driver, that is the only three Italian persons on the grid, are knocked out in a race in Imola. Well, that's quite insane to be honest. Uh, Talking of some other big shocks, but in a positive way, Carlos Sainz was fastest in Q2. I mean, still we know that it's only Q2 and that is not actual pole, but still being fastest ahead of both the McLarens, Russell, Verstappen, yeah, that was a mega lap from Carlos. Also, both the Aston Martins, finally they are Formula One cars rather than green dustbins. Alonso P5, Alonso P6 and Stroll P7. That was a great lap from both the Astons to make it through into Q3. Isaac Hadjar again making it through and proving that he is a great driver and a great addition to the V Carb team. Uh, Further down we can see Carlos Sainz and both the Williams making it into Q3 now. So as I said, this weekend Ferrari is the sixth fastest car after Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, Aston Martin, and Williams, which is quite sad to be honest with you, as Q3 is now underway and the drivers are now out on track for the final runs before the actual shoot down for qualifying. Let's talk about the favorites for pole. Coming to the session, it was surely the two McLarens of Piastri and Norris. And still, after all that has happened, I believe that those two drivers are the ones which have the biggest chance and are the only possible contenders for pole position. In Q1, the gap between the McLarens and the Red Bull was quite huge, maybe putting me in doubt that has Red Bull brought some kind of upgrade? Man, what I'm speaking is that Red Bull hiding its pace for qualifying in the practice session, but no. Turns out that McLaren definitely quicker in Q2. Piastri just before Carlos Sainz went fastest. Piastri was P1, Norris was P2, similar to the trend which has been followed this weekend. But only 20 milliseconds again between the two McLarens. So it will be interesting to see which driver comes out on top between those two. Maybe Verstappen or Russell, if they put in a great lap, have an outside chance of getting maybe a front row or even pole position, but still, I think it's gonna be the two mighty McLarens battling it out for pole position into Q3. As here we can see, as Lando Norris begins his lap, let's ride on board. Actually, talking of McLaren, if you might have heard the Formula One banter a bit more, it is speculated that McLaren has some kind of secret strategy, which is obviously legal. That's why the car is running still, but they have some kind of a secret uh, solution into the rear brake ducts, which is keeping the rear tires quite a lot cooler and in a much better shape as compared to the rivals. Because throughout the whole race stint, maybe in qualifying McLaren are beatable, but in the race stint throughout the season, McLaren have been absolutely rapid. So using thermal imagery, the Aston Martin team figured out maybe that they are using some kind of cool spots into that rear brake duct, which is keeping their tires cooler and more intact. But yeah, still no confirmation there for McLaren that what actually that is. As we see Lando Norris through sectors 1 and 2, it was fastest sector 1 for Lando, but then Oscar Piastri took the fastest sector 1. It is the fastest sector 2 for Lando Norris. Now let's see how Oscar Piastri responds to this lap time, as Stroll goes fastest ahead of Fernando Alonso. That's surprising, as Oscar Piastri through sector 2 goes even faster than Lando Norris, but Max Verstappen is going faster than both of them into the first sector. Lando Norris crosses the line. Let's see what lap time it is for Lando. A 1 minute 14.962, which puts him around 8 tenths faster than Isaac Hadjar. Piastri is on a good lap. I think might be ahead of Lando Norris as the lap finishes. But again, Max Verstappen is going faster than both of them. Let's see what lap time it is. Oscar Piastri now goes fastest, a 1 minute 14.821, a tenth and a half faster than Lando Norris. Verstappen will be the next driver to cross the line. George Russell further back is on a great lap but still not matching the two McLarens. Max Verstappen crosses the line and goes fastest. Max Verstappen goes fastest with a lap time of 1 minute 14.772, which puts him half a tenth faster than both the McLarens. George Russell is the last driver who will be setting the lap time for the first runs. Russell goes P4. Again, that solid George Russell 2.5 tenths behind the two McLarens and the Red Bull. Great lap time there. Carlos Sainz was absolutely setting the world alive at the end of Q2. Let's see what lap time he's able to put in. Carlos Sainz goes up to P8 and his teammate Alex Albon is P9 and Pierre Gasly hasn't set a lap time yet. So first runs in Q3 are done, and well, guess who's fastest? It's Franz Hermann or Max Verstappen, currently the quickest of all. And just few minutes ago, I was speaking that it might be the two McLarens who might be battling it out for pole position, but no, it's the Dutchman who has done it once again. Though this is the first runs, and still 5 minutes are left in the session. But amazing lap from Max there, putting him up into P1, 1 minute 14.772. Piastri P2, half a 10 behind him. Lando Norris a bit more further back, a 10 and a half in P3. And a solid lap from George Russell once again put him into the top 5 in P4. Taking a look at the comparison of the lap times, Verstappen is absolutely rapid as compared to the McLarens from the first sector. 10 and a half faster than the two McLarens. Sector 2 and Sector 3, Piastri has gained a bit of lap time, but the advantage that Max has in Sector 1 is like absolutely unbeatable.